So this presentation is a sample from last year, and they had the assignment of building a bridge. And so their assignment actually required designing the bridge to meet certain restrictions, and then they built it using the Pasco bridge kits and measured the forces experienced to make sure that they met customer requirements and presented the cost information. So a lot of the elements are the same, um, but they actually had to build and test a physical bridge. So it is slightly different, but I want to go through some of the elements that make this a good presentation. This was actually one of the winning presentations. And so I want to go through some of the elements that made this a successful presentation so that you can consider that as you create your own. So slide one, title slide, will have your group's title, and the student names should be listed for your group. But remember, the presentation is an individual submission. So if you want to add a line that says like presented by and only has your name, or submitted by and only has your name, or just put your name in bold while the other names are not, something to differentiate that while you are part of a group, that this presentation is yours. I like this title page. It's got, somebody looking at a layout. It's actually not a bridge design, it's a layout picture that's more like designing an office, which would actually be very applicable to you guys. But part of being a persuasive speaker is having a presentation that is eye-catching and engaging and makes the audience feel like, oh, these people know what they're doing. So having an image like this that looks like a design or architectural based image is a good thing to do as well. So the first slide that would be associated with it. Oh, sorry, things weren't moving as quickly. The next slide they have is the requirements that were associated with their project. So again, you're going to have your requirements listed. The goals and objectives of your project should be listed on the second slide. So this will be both what you were given as requirements and restrictions, but then also some of what you hope to achieve in meeting those requirements. This slide is not as interesting. Use kind of muted colors here, but you see that it's very easy to read. One thing that I might note on this slide that you might keep an eye on is two different font colors. They've got white in some places and black in others. Both are very clear and visible, but if they had the table in white as well, it would also be just as visible, I think. So you might want to consider that of just uniformity within your presentation. So this slide, the team objectives, is a really important slide. Not so much of the words that are on the page, but how you narrate it. So it's 4 simple objectives that they look to meet, and they met all of them. And that is a good number of objectives to have, just 3 or 4. I would say certainly no more than 5, because you're wanting to really differentiate your project from other people's projects. And so this objectives page that you will have as well is looking at providing information, what you were trying to do, and it should be stuff that you say that you accomplished. So fulfilling all the objectives of the customer or the customer requirements, everyone should have that. That should be one of your overall objectives. Now this goes into 2 of the things that this particular group looked to accomplish. They wanted to minimize material usage and minimize total cost without sacrificing function. So that was their overall objective of the project, that instead of making it aesthetically pleasing, instead of making it a bridge that could support a lot of weight, they went for the minimum weight requirements that allowed them to use minimal material and lower their total cost. And so that was kind of the driving force of this project for that group. Not all groups chose to minimize cost, but this one won the cost category, and they were very persuasive in their presentation about how that was the function of their project, was to provide customer requirements at the minimal cost. Simplicity was part of their design, looking to keep smooth lines, very straightforward, overall simple design. So think about how you want to phrase your objectives. And again, you should meet all of them and they should be between 3 and 5 bullets. I would keep it to 3 or 4. So for their images, they actually had an image of the finished product as well as a technical drawing. So you will have 2 slides as well. One will be the technical drawing of the office, and the other will be a slide with pictures of the furnishings, decors, uh, technology that's being integrated, whatever that might be. So you will also have 2 slides, one with a technical drawing. That technical drawing might be a CAD drawing like this one, or it might be a rendering from one of the programs that I showed you that was available, the Steelcase or IKEA or some other tool that you found, but you will have one that's the schematic and one that's supporting pictures. And this again, when you're narrating your speech, you shouldn't just show it, you should describe it. You should talk about what is special about those items, and what you really want to drive home to make it persuasive is the features that you highlight are the same as your overall objectives. So when you're trying to highlight the individual components of your final design and the layout for your final design, you should be speaking back to those same things that you referenced as part of your team objectives. Now, obviously, you're not going to scroll back and forth through the slides as I've been doing here. But you need to keep that in my mind as me being the client. You will show this slide, and then you will show a slide of pictures of materials and a schematic, and those pictures and schematic should reinforce the objectives that you had already stated. And so as the client, the potential customer, I should be able to keep those goals in mind and actively see how you're fulfilling those goals through this process. Now, they did not include a Gantt chart. You will. So there is no Gantt chart example for me to show you, but they did show, they broke this cost into 2 slides. And so I kept both of them in here so that you could see 2 different ways of doing the cost. One is to provide a bill of materials. And you could include a bill of materials for the project that includes those 4 different categories we talked about. So you have all the technology that's required, you have the furniture that's required, you have the decor elements, and you have supplies. So you could put in the table that is the budget and speak to it in table form like this. The other way they did it was they actually put the picture back up, so they're keeping the design in front of you, which is a very persuasive element to keep a visual, and they kind of summarize the key elements of their budget. So they give a total cost and a dollar to Newton ratio, which was required for this particular project. But you see they give that total cost number and they kind of put that into perspective of what that means for the project. So, maybe doing a table like this and showing the full bill of materials for your budget is the way that you want to go to talk through each of those individual things, and you see their total costs there below. Or maybe you want to just highlight the major elements of the budget, like maybe the 4 different categories of the budget and the grand total, and have with that a picture of your design to kind of say, look, you're getting all of this for this low cost. Effectively, that's what you would be trying to convince the person of. And so you need to be keeping in mind the overall project goals with each of the slides that you present. You will only have 1 slide to show your budget, so you're not going to be able to do all things in that 1 slide without it looking really cluttered, which is another good thing about this presentation. It is not cluttered. Everything is very clear and easy to read. There's strong visuals and very few words. most of the presentation persuasion came from the speaker describing what we were looking at rather than reading content on the slide. And that is very, very helpful in doing a business pitch like this. You keep the words on the slide to a minimum, you fill it with good visuals that makes the client say, oh yes, I can really picture this. This is the project I want to support. So you will only have one budget slide that you can either go for more detail and show each individual component and its cost and how that all adds up, like this bill of materials, or you can present the budget in more general terms, in categories with a grand total, and have that in reference to the actual design itself. And then finally, the last slide, and potentially the most important, is why is their proposal to be selected among their competitors? What makes their proposal so good? And so they actually just put that question out there. What makes our bridge the best? I'll tell you, the person that presented this was very engaging and made no mistake that they felt their project was the best, and was pretty persuasive in presenting this to their, on behalf of their team. So you want to think about what makes your bridge the best, not your bridge, I'm sorry, your office, what makes your office design the best, and then summarize it, make it obvious. So they went with it's aesthetically pleasing. So talk about how it looks, the design overall. It accomplishes the goal at the lowest price. So again, bringing out the function, which was one of their initial goals, was saying we're going to keep it simple to keep the price low. And then the One Trust bridge design, they happened to know that their design was different from every other person in both sections, and so it was unique, and they were able to highlight the uniqueness. And then finally, they actually talked about how it could be decorated for Christmas or other holidays or 4th of July, that their design allowed for other opportunities. And that's something that you also might want to consider. I know I mentioned it at the beginning for the project, you know, could this be expanded for long-term use? Could the materials be easily transported and integrated into their office at the company? You know, what other potentials are available beyond what you've done in this initial design? And so that's what they did here, was they looked at what else could be done. It wasn't actually done for this project, but what possibilities exist if you choose their proposal. So your final slide is where you should be connecting back to the initial goals, showing that you completed them, highlighting the uniqueness of your proposal, and giving the client a view, a vision for what else could potentially be done if their design was chosen. What options would be available in the future? Once again, very, very little writing. It's a lot of empty space that allows for the reader to clearly see these 4 main points. And just like I said, the goals you might want between 3 and 5, they did 4. Here, once again, 4 main points. Very clear, easy to understand, straight to the point. So while their project was different and had a few different requirements than what yours does, I think this presentation shows some of the ways that you can use a PowerPoint presentation without a lot of content on the slides themselves, but really paint a picture that conveys a message to the client. And in this case, the message that they're trying to present is, here is a design that is simple, it's inexpensive, and it gives opportunity for some nice aesthetic features. And that is where they landed. So if you have questions or you want to share some ideas, as always, please feel free to reach out and let me know. But I wanted to walk through a presentation that was good and highlight what specifically made this presentation so effective and how that might be used in your own work. So um, I hope you all are staying safe and staying healthy, and please let me know if you have any questions.